Well, Christmas came a little bit later than most of us for Vladimir Zelensky in Ukraine, as Prime Minister Mark Carney in Halifax gave the Ukraine and Zelensky $2.5 billion in loan guarantees, something that a lot of Canadians are confused about it. To talk more about it and to break it down, as always, joined by Paul Micucci. Paul, how are you?
Good, Jim. Yeah.
Happy New Year,
Merry
by the way.
Christmas.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Happy
Merry
New Year.
Christmas and Happy New Year.
Well, it was a Merry Christmas for
Yeah.
Ukraine again, and
Oh, wow.
a lump of coal for a lot of Canadians struggling through the holidays, struggling to heat their homes and prepare themselves for a new year where we've already been told the price of food's going up, and now our government, it's another 2.5 billion. And a lot of us are wondering why? Why now?
Well, yeah, why now? It's interesting. So we thought the prime minister was done for the year. He basically said he's cutting off. He's actually heading out for vacation. We'll see you in the new year. So, we're like, okay. Pierre Poilievre was doing his rounds, trying to do a wrap up why things happened at his party.
Yeah.
So, that's all we were seeing. The next thing you know, we're watching the TV and up pops the prime minister heading to Halifax to have a meeting. I don't think anyone was aware. I don't even know how many press actually got into play.
No press.
Yeah, no press. And so he heads to Halifax. I was trying to figure out why Halifax, quite frankly, but I guess it was the refueling for planes and everything were occurring in Halifax. It's the closest port, I guess, for him to get into. They had a quick meeting, and then there was the announcement that $2.5 billion was going to be given additionally to the Ukraine, which takes the total up to $22 billion. So, and that's life to date. So, and a lot of this money, when we dug into it, because, then everyone started asking the question. I asked the question. I'm like, okay, how much have we given to the Ukraine? So it's 22 billion. And that's kind of starting from 2022 moving forward. What did it go towards? What has been the allocation of funds and how much has been paid? So, and how much of it is the interesting one for our viewers? How much are grants? How much are loans?
And how much will we see as Canadians back to us?
Yeah, how much will we see back to us? And that was the Trump. I don't know, for just going to back up for a minute. When Trump, I remember the first White House meeting when he got with Zelensky, and
was yelling at him.
They were yelling at him and everything.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of that meeting, I think the backdrop to that meeting was Biden had pretty much given grants.
Right.
So what was happening is what was unfolding in front of everyone is Trump was saying, no, time out. I'm going to loans because the EU has always, with any country, been notorious through the IMF, a lot of it, actually making sure that when countries get money, they get it as loans, not as grants. Biden was not doing that, right? He was basically giving, military equipment, everything. It was just going, right? It was just going to the
without
Ukraine,
any questions asked,
and without any money ever being coming back or commitments or anything. So Trump got aboard, and he had that big fight with them, and then he came back. So, a lot of what happened on the 27th with our prime minister was through a loan programs, which is, I think that probably gave me a little more comfort that he is primarily trying to utilize the loan mechanisms through the IMF, because the IMF back 2022 created an account, an administered account for the Ukraine, which all the donations to the Ukraine would funny through loans, donations, and such. So, I think he was trying to utilize that. The question becomes, I think, we're into it for 22 billion. Out of the 22 billion, our military assistance is about 6.5 billion. That's not going to come back.
Never.
So that's the equipment, the armored vehicles, the drones, everything we've given to the Ukraine.
Correct.
That's a huge number. It's 6.5 billion. The humanitarian funding, which equates to about 372 million, is for health services and displaced population.
Which there's a lot of.
Right. So that was kind of the money. That's not coming back.
Right.
Right. That's out there. That's gone. That's in a grant format. Development assistance. This is for victims of violence, mental health. This kind of, it's a $700 million amount. It's big. It's kind of the unallocated funds, I'd say. A lot of it just goes to a lot of programs. but it does go to sort of agriculture and energy,
Sure.
which I think is good, and probably the rebuilding of the country. So that's kind of where some of it goes. And then 12.1 billion, that's the money that's actually being loaned. So, that 12.1 billion is the money where we've kind of put through the IMF. We've loaned. The US and the EU have direct relationships on loans with the Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the 190 countries that make up the IMF basically are moving through this administered account.
Okay.
So that's kind of how it's functioning. Security on it. So let's talk about that for a minute. There's none. There's,
Well, that's concerning for any country giving them money.
yeah. And when I mean none, I mean like, hopefully they're 10-year loan agreements. Some of it will come back. I think our earlier discussion is we're hoping that when the reconstruction of the country happens, which it's interesting now, some of the monies that we're giving, even part of the 2.5, actually a large part of the 2.5 was for reconstruction and development of the Ukraine's gas and energy security. So a lot of that was going to that from the 2.5 billion, and other parts of that were going for infrastructure loans. So the countries are already starting to loan money for the rebuilding, and the war's not even over.
Well, that's I think part of that, just to make a point, is they feel that they're into the home stretch of the peace negotiations.
I hope.
I think everyone hopes enough is enough. And there has been talk for Zelensky's trying to get 15, 20, 25-year guarantee of a peace guarantee.
Right.
So they'll need that couple decades to get back to normal, whatever normal is, to rebuild some of the most basic infrastructure, water, sewage, gas, hydro, all across the country has to be rebuilt. Unfortunately, Ukraine has suffered enormously. And not the least of which, the Russians have placed hundreds of thousands of landmines across the country.
Yes.
And even whatever territory they get back, they have to clear those landmines.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Jim. And it's terrible. And just to say, so this show, and as we started the show, I just wanted to jump in and say, we all want peace. So let's
yes, immediately.
Right. The challenge is, for a country of Canada's size, the price of peace in the Ukraine is becoming overwhelming for us. And I think that's where we're kind of all starting to realize, when is the tap out time? Because we've been a really big contributor. We're, behind, if you look at it, of course, the US and the combined EU countries have made up, I think it's the EU's 200 billion right now.
Mm-hmm.
The US is about 130 billion to date. So there's 350 billion been roughly estimated spent on the war. And out of the remaining part, Canada is a big portion. It's almost, 2/3 of all the other 190 countries. The fundings come from Canada. So we're in for it for 22 billion. So it's been a significant contribution from Canada overall. But, as a country our size with 40 million people, it's roughly, equating right now to the, somewhere about $300, roughly $300 a person in Canada is the contribution. So it's a lot of money for Canadians. If family of four is at $1,200 supporting that war. And it's getting to a point where if it continues on, and this is what kind of got me coming out of the next meeting that he had with Trump, it didn't get resolved.
No.
They were hoping, they had lots of calls,
yes,
which we talked about. He went back home, and then it started. There's talk now that 2026, the cash requirement for the war is going to be about $170 billion if it continues. And it's like,
think about Canada right now. We are fighting our own financial war with our biggest trading partner, the United States.
We are.
When we started giving money to Ukraine, we didn't have to worry about Donald Trump. We didn't have to worry about tariffs or the 51st state.
Yeah.
And business was going back and forth, no problem. So now we have an economy that's taken a hit over the last couple of years. We have a lot of people struggling with food insecurity, with housing, with finding a job.
Yeah.
So that's why I think a lot of us are like, wait a second. We've given them a lot of money. We want peace. We try to help Ukraine all that we can. But why this money? Why these loans right now? What I didn't understand what Carney and the Liberals hope to gain and what Carney's end game is. It was not explained.
Well, and I think that's your point. If you look at where the monies are going in detail, so when you break it down, healthcare, for example, in the Ukraine, we talked about it's going for healthcare. So hospital operations need to keep funded. We get that. It's a war. But in Canada right now, we have ER closures, we have hospital beds. We've done shows on it, right? It's a mess.
Gentleman just died in Edmonton because he was in ER too long.
Exactly.
Just days ago.
It's going for Ukrainian pensions. So part of the funding is going to keep their pension for seniors going.
Their pensions?
Their pension. So part of that money gets allocated to their pension program to keep it going because they don't have an economy functioning.
Well, okay, but there are millions of Canadians right now who are working well into their 70s because they don't have a pension.
Well, and we've extended our retirement ages, and we quite frankly have a lot of seniors with food issues.
Yeah.
Food insecurity issues. So it's going to education to keep their schools open and everything else. Again, we're at the point, even in this province right now, we have the government taking over our school boards.
Plus problems with community colleges and universities.
Overcrowding and shutting of colleges, right?
And cutting programs.
Exactly. Housing, right? Of course, housing support right now in the Ukraine, that's part of the money's going to housing support. I don't even want to get into homeless encampments and quite frankly, our housing, we do many shows on it. It's a mess.
And from coast to coast, there's no province that's escaped it, Paul.
Right. Infrastructure, as you mentioned, because everything's been blown up. So the monies are going to infrastructure. We're struggling right now with aging bridges, roads, traffic, given our immigration over the last few years is horrendous. We can't seem to get light rail put to bed.
You saw what happened in the Yukon a few days ago?
No.
They had a deep freeze and overwhelmed their grid. Their power grid, and it was minus 50 some with the wind chill, and their power grid couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
And that's our own infrastructure.
Yeah. We're actually using part of that part of those loans that are going there are basically for policing courts and to keep their courts open. Right. Again, with our crime levels and everything going on here, we have the same, it's interesting as they're talking about what they're using the money for. I'm kind of mirroring our own issues in Canada. I'm saying, okay, time out a little bit. Sympathetic. Again, we want peace, but as a country our size, we're getting to a point where we're starting to crack under the pressures of trying to support other countries. Again, and the issue becomes, and I know, I get it. I get that the government and people within the government, formerly and now, really want this to happen. I understand why, right?
Okay, so here's my thing, Paul. Let's give you some money to help your courts, but we need to have X amount of dollars for our own country to make sure our courts stay open, that we have the necessary crown prosecutors, judges, and bailiffs necessary to keep the courts going. There has been multiple stories, basically to wrap up the calendar year, that more and more courts in Canada are forced to do plea deals because they can't get all the cases through the court system. And so that's why we as Canadians are frustrated. Like, what? They just kind of convicted of that crime and that is their sentence. And a lot of them, us, don't feel right. They feel violated. And there's a lot of victims out there that just shrug their shoulders and go, what? And that's the state of our judicial system in the country right now. Is the court systems are so overwhelmed, the jails and detention centers are so overcrowded that the courts are forced to do plea deals. And then at the same time, you're giving money to help Ukrainian courts. Give money for essential food and medicine and help the people. But the courts, that one I struggle with.
Well, yeah, and that's when I started digging into where the dollars go in each of these programs. They're actually sort of, a lot of them, I mentioned the 6.5 go directly into providing, weapons and military.
Which is they need every day.
I get that, right? Well, they're going through, I think it's $160 million a day to keep it going.
Oh, yeah.
It's some crazy number.
Absolutely.
But you look at it, that's going, but now we're getting into loans for rebuilding and infrastructure of the country. I'm not sure we can do that. Because it's not money we have. When we went through the budget, allocation and the budget deficit shows, we realized that those deficits now, the money we're using to fund these countries are coming out of those deficit dollars potentially, and they're going to grow if the loans don't get met. So as these loans extend over a number of years, if they can't meet them,
But this is
they
feels
just
like,
keep getting extended. So the money goes in,
yeah.
doesn't get repaid. How does it get repaid? I get your point. Canadian companies can go over there and they can do engineering and projects. They'll pay income tax back in Canada. I get that. I'm not sure a lot of Canadians who basically are funding it through their tax contributions right now
We'll ever see the money.
will ever get any benefit out of it. There may be 10 or 30 or 100 companies that get some benefit. There may be trades who go back to the Ukraine and actually work, to restore and rebuild. They'll get some benefit out of it if they relocate, but they're going to be relocating out of. That's another thing. As we rebuild this country, trades who are here will probably go back, right? There'll be more money to be made there for quite a few years.
Then we're short tradespeople.
Well, we're already short trades-people.
But then we'll be short even more, won't
Yeah,
we?
well, exactly. So that's it's interesting because that whole condo housing kind of funnel that's a mess right now, as all that clears up, there's actually quite a bit of speculation now that any trade that's left in Canada will be gone because they won't wait it out.
They'll go right to where the work is.
They won't wait the cycle out. So right now, like I mentioned on a couple of shows, there's a lot of work in Florida right now, and there's probably going to be work there. So they'll disappear, and we'll have a huge void of trades in the country because lack of projects.
Again, Paul, I guess I'm a little frustrated that there was the complete lack of democratic process over the latest money given to Ukraine. No politicians were able to debate it. No media were able to ask questions. Robert Fife from the Globe, it was interesting on X, basically had to put a line there from a CP Pool reporter. That was about the extent of the media coverage. And everyone kind of woke up on the 27th and go, what's happening? And then it was gone. And then Zelensky was in Washington. And now, I mean, it's almost like burying the story because now the news cycle, it's New Year's Eve, it's New Year's. And before Carney must be thinking in his people, by the time they get back to the House of Commons, there'll be so many other things that happen in the country around the world that his feet won't be held to the fire for it.
Yeah, I guess so. I would honestly, Jim, I would like to hear from the former finance minister, who's now the envoy to Ukraine.
Chrystia
Freeland.
Right.
I'd like to hear what the plan is now.
I'd love to hear the plan.
Like I would really like. She's the one who kind of orchestrated, CUPTA, which is the free trade agreement with the Ukraine. She's the one who kind of was championed, getting in and actually funding the war. That's her home. That's where her family's from. That's the connection. I get it. So now I'd like to kind of understand. Okay, where are we going here now? Like, what is the plan? How long are we staying in this? What is the recovery? Where does Canada fit in? That's where she is. She's there now. That's her job. She took that envoy position to go there and do that. Okay, let's understand that now. And that would have been, honestly, for me, what would have been helpful prior to that meeting would have been him, her, the prime minister, having a conversation about the direction now.
Chrystia Freeland's a brilliant woman with incredible credentials. There's no question about it. So she's more than capable of speaking to the Canadian people and the Canadian media and a group of reporters like, okay, it's 2026. Canada's given this much money up until date. Yep. And now for my time in Ukraine, this is what I see is the need. And this is how it's going to be implemented. And this is the start, the middle, and the finish. I think we would all be open to hearing what she has to say and what kind of blueprint, what kind of game plan that Freeland, the country, and Ukraine have to get it back in order.
Well, and the interesting part, what I find, she understood it. So when she was the finance minister, her biggest criticism was that our GDP and our productivity was going down. So this is a really good example. So we're a country of declining productivity. It's been going like this forever. So now we're funding projects in another country. So we're financing, we're directly funding, it's kind of 50-50.
Loan guarantees,
all that good stuff. So we're doing all that. So how does that increase our productivity and our GDP, and where do we play into it? I'd really like to know, because otherwise, I would think, and I looked at it and I said, okay, if I was sitting in their shoes and I was trying to figure out, I had $22 billion to loan guarantee and to spend and everything else, would I not be better to go to other countries and form another relationship? Because this is where the critical dollars have to come now. And this is where I keep emphasizing to people on other shows, we have to spend our money wisely now. So if we're going to form relationships, like you and I talked when we did the sub show, we have to form a relationship there where, you know, that those subs get built with our steel and our aluminum, and then they bring in the smarts, and you know, that's the engineering. That's what we need to do. And, you know, I'm looking at countries like Germany and Japan and South Korea right now, and I'm saying, okay, you know, if we're going to form relationships and we're going to spend money, we should strategically be spending money there, so then they'll provide us with things that we can increase our productivity with.
Doesn't it seem like a win-win for everyone involved?
But that's where I think we need her to step up a little with the prime minister and say, okay, if I'm going to continue on with this, why does it make sense for Canada? Like, how does it increase the productivity of Canada? So are we going to, you know, aside from, you know, we have a large population of Ukrainian people. They're wonderful people. I had a business partner who was Ukrainian for years, and I learned a lot about the culture and a lot of people in the West from the Ukraine. I love it. But quite frankly, you know, I think it's rather than the cultural connection, it's beholding to all of Canada to have that discussion now, because we're into it for quite a bit of money right now.
And there are issues in every province in the country. There are people in need and departments in need in every province and every sector of the country. They're saying, well, wait a second. When they go to ask for something, they're told this is all we have, or we don't have any, or this is what you get. And then they see that all these other announcements and pronouncements about loan guarantees and money given under the guys that were trying to help Ukraine in the war. Yes, Ukraine needs our support. But again, as a country, as we enter 2026, what is the ceiling? You mentioned that, Paul. What is like, okay, we can't give any more money, but we could do this or this because we really have to help our own people.
Okay, so this is interesting. We hate the word ceiling. As Canadians, we do. Americans understand debt ceilings.
Yeah.
And they fight about it. They have these horrendous government shutdowns.
Yeah.
They're nasty. It's terrible. This year was the 25. They had the longest shutdown of government in the history of the country, I think. But, you know, we never talk about it.
But are we getting to the point we need to?
Well, yeah, sure we are, because quite frankly, whether it's off balance sheet, on balance sheet, whether it's financing versus cash, these are all commitments we're making that actually deal with our borrowing power, deal with our deficits. We have to, like, we need. But it's interesting. We pass a budget. Well, this is a really good, interesting test case. We pass a budget, you know, budget goes through, hey, pass, everyone stands up, you know, we pass the budget. You know, the opposition knew the budget was going to pass. They know before,
of course,
right? They play all kinds of games, but at the end of the day, they know it's going to pass. If I know it's going to pass, I would say the only thing I'd want is actually to put in it that basically that we're capped at that.
Well, okay, and I don't know why you would say no to that. That means I pass the budget, we cap it at this, then I get everything else in there.
Yeah, so
would you take that deal?
You have to work within budget. In Canada, we don't have guardrails for budgets. But I find it the most bizarre thing. So you can blow through your budget and come back, and there's no real penalties or restrictions or anything for doing it. You just continue to spend the money, and then you come back and say, well, I tried. I made these estimates, but I needed to spend more money.
But once upon a time, the country could get away with it financially.
Yes.
And then, as you say, the debt and deficit have built and to the point where the old ways of doing things, I just don't know if it can be done anymore financially, fiscally, morally in the country. Like Canada, it gets to a point where they simply can't afford to keep doing that, Paul.
Well, and that's our debt exposure, that's our interest coverage. Those are all the things we talk about on the show quite a bit, and we're coming up against them now, and that's the challenge.
And then we can't keep. Then at the same time, if that is the challenge, whatever Zelensky wants, give him whatever he needs. Sometimes we'll have to say, we could give you this, and that's all we can give you. I am sorry. It happens at all walks of life. You can't just go to the bank and say, I want $1 million, like you only qualify for 100,000. No, but I want $1 million. Well, you're only getting 100,000.
And we're only on that right now. We're on that tour route. You know, when he comes on that tour and you see him, I'm on the tour now, and he comes around. He stops in Canada because, quite frankly, aside from the EU, aside from the US, we're the biggest contributor in the other 190 countries. So we are the mainstay in that. So if we stop, that's a big contribution that he's got to replace with another country.
And what is a signal to those other countries if we stop? That's bad for him if we stop, because a lot of other countries will go, well, if they're stopping, why am I not stopping?
But it's interesting. So this is an interesting approach, because you're starting to see it. For example, I was surprised that some of the countries give a lot less than we thought.
Yes.
So, for example, when I looked at, the UK, part of the EU, they're slightly more than us.
Just slightly, though.
So, yeah, I think we're at 22, they're at 25.
Yeah.
Germany's a big contributor. They're about 7 more than the UK. But, I was shocked to see how close we were with the UK. Poland is only at 5. Right? Because they've decided to put money into their own military.
Have they ever?
Right? So what they've done is they've taken it. They said, we'll give you a little money, but quite frankly, we're going to reinvest in our own country, and we're going to spend all our money to kind of weaponize and build the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, build their military. So they've done that. They've done it in a big way, which has paid dividends to their country, because by doing that, they increase their productivity, they increase their spend, their GDP, and they're now one of the most successful countries in the world at growth in GDP. So
with one of the most successfully equipped militaries in Europe now.
Exactly, and that's been their that's been their direction, which is paying dividends for them. Germany, on the other hand, it was interesting the other day, Germany, which has been a big contributor into this through the IMF and through the EU, is having some other challenges right now. They're trying to increase their military spend, but they can't get people to join the military. So as you noticed over the last few days, they've had crowds protesting because they're talking very seriously about conscription again. And the university students, in tens of thousands of them,
they want no part of that.
Have hit the street and said, time out, we're not doing this, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of gone by the by. So they're kind of, they've made this big contribution, but quite frankly, at home, they're struggling with a bunch of issues right now. We, on the other hand, have a very similar issue, and we're not, we've talked about, food insecurity and everything else. We're trying to build up our military. We're trying to figure out what to do with our military. We increase our military spending as we promised under NATO. We're trying to do all that stuff. We're trying to fix our housing. We're trying to do all these recruitment of military. We've talked about, it was mentioned before Christmas, bringing back public servants as reserves.
Yep.
So all these things have been thrown on the table. We're still trying to figure that out and also make these contributions. We can't do both. We can't do both. So we're going to have to make also some value decisions within that budget. So, we can spend more money and give more money to the monies required in 26, or we can stop that and actually spend the money at home, increase our own productivity, similar to what. So it's kind of a strategic, that's leadership. Like, this is where it's tough to be a leader, because at some point, you have to make a decision. It's not, I can just give money to everyone. It becomes, I have to make value decisions where I'm going to put my money.
And then ultimately, a segment of the population hates you for that. And you have to be able to live with that.
Yes.
And some leaders can't, and some say, I'm fine with it. It's for the immediate and long-term good of my country. I will do this. I will be unpopular. I will be hated. I may be voted out next election, but for the next 20, 30 years, my country's in good shape.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's a tough thing for a lot of politicians who have an ego and like being prime minister, like being a president, to realize they might make a decision that'll put them out of office.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Because, you do have, factions within the current government that still want to keep funding, the military in the Ukraine. It makes sense to them. You slow that down and go another direction, that's going to cause you challenges.
And we have a lot of challenges, Paul, and we look ahead to the next calendar year. Carney needs, I know he doesn't like talking to the media. He feels they're beneath him, quite frankly. And he's kind of flipping. You saw this year in the interviews. He was a little combative to Global, to CTV, to the CBC, no matter who was talking to him. And all the questions were very reasonable. And the journalists asking the questions are at the top of their game. And he was a little dismissive. But unfortunately, like it or not, he needs to use people like us, the media, to get the word out, to explain to the country what he's doing, why he's doing it, and how we're going to do it. Because as Canadians, if we know what he's doing, why we're doing it, and how it'll work out, Canadians we've got a history of going along with it.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, we would fall behind. Well,
Of course we would.
But as I mentioned on the show, I would have rolled out before that meeting in Halifax. I would have rolled out a press conference to explain what it was about, where the money's from, and why strategically it made sense, and what was the ultimate benefit back to Canada. I would have brought the envoy to the Ukraine. I would have brought Friedland out,
Of course.
and I would have had her talk about it.
And then the story's over.
Yeah.
And then oh, okay, that's what they said. Okay, it makes total sense. And as a Canadian, like, okay, then let's get ready for New Year's Eve.
Which was interesting. I don't know about around your Christmas table, but my post-Christmas events that I was going to, this was a hot topic. Yeah, I found it interesting how many people, and it's interesting because my family has, we're a diverse cultural family with many cultures in our family. So as I went from different dinner tables, I was noticing each of them were focused on it because it was one of the sole news stories that played out for days and days. Honestly, it didn't get great. It wasn't a warm reception. I wasn't getting, and that's when I called you and said we should do a show on this because I'm curious, and I got more educated on it as I did it because I started to dig into what was in the 22 billion, how it was being spent. It was very interesting. And I think what it did by not having a great PR strategy around it, it caused a lot of people to start to dig in and look at it and say, okay, is it the right? And I think it definitely could have been handled better.
It's, some politicians have an innate ability, Paul, with optics.
Yes.
They do things at the right time. May not be something that's popular, may not be necessarily something you want as a citizen, but it's done at the right time. And then people, okay, I'm going to deal with it. Think about the timing. Just after Christmas, people are staring at these enormous visa bills.
We had horrendous weather. Quite frankly, weather was bad. Boxing Day, the weather was, you couldn't have had a worse lineup to this. Boxing Day is like an ice storm across Canada.
Yeah.
People are isolated in their homes, kind of pissed off because they can't get to see family, a lot of them, because they can't move through the day. It's cold. And now you're releasing this information, just poorly planned.
And that's why so many Canadians are like, wait a second, time out. Why? Why this? Why now? And then they're, as you say, digging into it and trying to understand. But if you get ahead of it and they say, hey, Canada, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it and how it's going to benefit the country. People go back to their daily life and no problem.
Yeah.
And this goes back to a show that Mike and I did a few weeks ago, that Mark Carney runs a country like he's the president and CEO of a Fortune 500 company, which he has been for the last 3 decades.
Sure.
He doesn't feel the need to have to explain to us Canadians, the average person, why he's doing things. I'm the prime minister. I'm Mark Carney. I don't need to tell you, but this is now he's going to be dealing with the aftermath and fallout from this.
Which I thought was interesting. So, they do the end, the end of the year plays.
Yes.
Which I thought was really interesting. The end of the year plays where they're showing the highlights of the year.
Yeah,
one of the highlights of the year is him sitting with Trump.
Yeah.
And whoever kind of picked it, I thought he did a great job on it. But he says, by the way, Mr. President, I had a conversation with the owners of Canada through the last election. All right. And they don't want to, they're not for sale. So he is acknowledging that there are owners of Canada. Right. So, and so I just think sometimes, we get over our skis a little and we forget that when we're doing our PR. And unfortunately, that's a learning curve that I hope in 2026 we get better at. The last thing I wanted to actually talk about, or one of the last things I wanted to talk to you, one of the interesting things that Mike and I had a little bit of a laugh about, part of the funding we have is that we I don't know if you remember, this was months and months, maybe even a year ago. We said we were going to seize Russian assets.
Correct.
So
there's a huge airplane at Pearson that's been seized and sitting there for a couple of years.
So part of the allocation of funding in that $22 billion is kind of this, I'm not sure it's in or out. You can't really tell, but there's $4.8 billion sitting there, and it seized Russian assets.
Oh,
so here's the thing I'm trying to figure out, right? So they're all sitting. So whether they be yachts, whether they be planes or whatever. So I'm assuming they've seized them. They're thinking of selling them and using them for security against a loan.
Right.
So,
right. The collateral, right?
Yeah, collateral. So, but I'm trying to figure out who in their right mind would buy them, right? And be safe traveling around on them. So, when I see you on that,
this sounds like a theme to
300-foot yacht with the helicopter pad.
It's like a John Wick movie.
Yeah.
There he is.
You say, Paul, why don't you come on the boat with me this summer?
No, I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm going to take a pass. Right?
No, I'm good. I'm going to go to Prince Edward County and hang out. Now, it's such a complex story, and Canadians just want a little bit of explanation and answers, and that's where hiding yourself from Parliament, hiding yourself from the House of Commons, hiding yourself from the media puts us all in the dark and leaves us with questions. Mark Carney is not a dumb man. He's a brilliant individual, but sometimes his ego gets in the way of his intelligence and prevents him from explaining to us why.
Yeah.
Okay, just let us know.
You know what? Or take a breath.
Yeah.
You said you were going to go to the Harrington estate. You're going to hang out at Sussex.
Sure.
You're going to take a break for vacation.
Read a book.
You deserve it. Read a book.
Yeah.
Come back after the new year.
Watch Shoresy. It's a good show.
Explain it to us later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, Paul, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, brother.
All the best to everyone.